New York City, America's biggest city, America's most important city, has a hidden city within the city. That hidden city is an important city too, and it is hiding in plain sight. New Yorkers ride past the hidden city in their cars and buses and trains, but most of them never venture into the hidden city. Most politicians ignore the hidden city too, even though it is bigger than the entire city of Boston. Imagine candidates campaigning for votes in Massachusetts and ignoring the city of Boston. That's what the presidential candidates are doing in New York City right now. They are ignoring the 700,000 people who live in federally funded public housing projects, the largest public housing population in America. And so a tenants organization, with the help of a couple of city council members, have invited the presidential candidates to visit a public housing project while they are campaigning for president in New York. And so far, none of the candidates have accepted that invitation. But I did. Here is some of what the candidates would see if they would put down those pizza slices and pastrami sandwiches they keep eating for the cameras and, for once, set foot in a public housing project.
We're here at Twin Parks West, which is one of 326 developments throughout New York City. A few months ago, we had a trespasser, unfortunately, rape someone in the elevator. So we were able to secure funding from the city's budget to invest in new intercoms. It happened in the elevator, and much of the crime that happens here at Twin Parks West and elsewhere in public housing is committed by trespassers because the doors are broken or the intercom systems are unreliable. And so we have no means of controlling who's entering and exiting the building. So you had a trespasser come into the building, go in the elevator, and he raped the vice president of the tenant association. But the police was able to find him. And so as a result, I was able to secure some funding from the city council to invest in new cameras, new doors. So this building will have a brand new door with a brand new intercom system by tomorrow morning.
Could you have gotten that funding if you didn't have a horror story like a rape to present to the city council?
I think, unfortunately, it's much easier to get funding when there's a tragedy.
If you had a presidential candidate here, what would you be showing the candidate?
Just to see what federal abandonment looks like.
Mm-hmm. So that's the heating system for this room.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work?
No.
The New York City Housing Authority will come and plaster over it, and the tenant has to put in a ticket number for a paint job. Wait a few months. In fact, tenants almost always never get paint jobs because the New York City Housing Authority, with its limited resources, can only focus on the most essential needs. And so by law, every landlord, including the New York City Housing Authority, is supposed to paint an apartment every 3.5 years, but there are apartments that have gone decades without paint jobs. So I think one of the greatest concerns that public housing residents have is the lack of lighting. Mm-hmm. I think more than anything else, improving lighting can improve the sense of safety. We do not have the resources to install new lighting infrastructure, so something we've done is have temporary lighting over there.
This has been, those doors are where the community center is, yeah. And it's just closed.
It's closed, obviously. You see.
No funding for operating it at all?
No, because of the capital need of the community center.
And is the playground locked also? You can't get in there?
Yes.
They don't let the kids in there at all?
No.
So their kids are sitting up there in their apartments looking down at this, and they're not allowed to use it at all.
There's a lack of access to amenities because of the deterioration of the community center itself.
Why wouldn't they at least just let the kids use this little playground if they can't get into the rooms of the community center?
I suspect that safety concerns relating to the playground itself. If a child gets injured, NYCHA is obviously liable. And NYCHA does not have enough funding to meet the basic needs of public housing, much less rehab amenities like community centers or playgrounds.
At another housing project in the Bronx, Richie Torres showed me another elevator that was the scene of a tragedy.
So here is elevator A. Around Christmas Day of 2015, you had a number of residents complain about the condition of the elevator. It was bouncing up and down. The elevator was raised above the landing here, and you had a senior citizen enter the elevator. It began bouncing up and down. He became startled, and he wound up falling out of the elevator, sustaining a head injury, and 3 days later, he died. And there was a report by the Department of Investigations concluding that the defect, the malfunction of the elevator, was directly tied to his death.
So Richie, if you could get a presidential candidate in one of these apartments, what difference do you think it would make to that candidate after that candidate's back in the car, leaving this housing project behind?
The hope is that it will leave an impression, a lasting impression on the candidate, but also the larger world. I think wherever a presidential candidate goes, the world is watching, and the world has a historic opportunity to see how the urban poor lives in public housing. You know, it speaks to the message of inequality that's uniting many of the presidential candidates, and public housing is ground zero for inequality. You know, the theme of the year is Black Lives Matter. Well, you have hundreds of thousands of people. The majority of the people who live in public housing are people of color, and those lives have been savagely abandoned and neglected at the hands of the federal government. And so if we're serious about valuing the lives of people of color, then we should be equally serious about reinvesting in their homes and showing that the people who live in public housing do matter.